What's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and I've got my Week 16 waiver wire selections here for you. Now, tried to do this show a little bit differently than what we've done all season long, because really this week is all about picking up guys that can actually help you this week. The waiver wire episode and for the rest of the season or earlier in the season has all been about, trying to target guys that we can use that week, plus picking up guys that we can keep on our roster and take advantage of later in the season. But we're at the end here. The clock's running out. We just need guys that can possibly help us for 1 week. So that's what I'm trying to focus on here this week, is guys that we can grab that can help us in our fantasy football championship. Now, for those of you that play a Week 17 Fantasy Football Championship, I'm going to need you to do something. Stop it. Tell your league to change it up or find a new league. Nobody should be doing anything in Week 17 of the NFL season for fantasy football. However, a lot of you still do, and I get it, and we're going to be here all the way through Week 17. So don't forget, if you have leagues next week or you just want to tune in and check out some information, we will still be here with all the same great content in Week 17. But for now, we got to focus in on Week 16. So let's take a look at my top picks for this week. All right, let's focus in on running backs first. And really the main guy this week that people are going to be running to add, if he's still out there and available, is going to be Le'Veon Bell. Now, across multiple platforms, he's showing us 43% owned. More than likely, he's going to be owned in a majority of very competitive leagues, though. A lot of people picked him up and never let him go. But it does look like he's been dropped in more than enough leagues at this point to be used this week in the show. So if for some reason he is available, he is your number one on the waiver wire. You got to go grab him. But my guess is a lot of you aren't going to have him available to you anyway. For some reason, if he is, then go get him. He is getting in Atlanta. And then, of course, as we know, CEH potentially missing some time. Heck, he could miss the next 2 weeks. They may just shut him down to make sure that he is ready for the playoffs. For New England, Sony Michel, it is a very tough matchup against Buffalo, but last week he did have 10 carries, 74 yards. Is Damian Harris going to be back anytime soon? They're going up against Buffalo, only 20.3% owned. He's going to be available in a lot of leagues. And kind of like another guy on this list here for running backs, he's going to get touches. And really, that's what we need at this point in the season. Like if you're going into a championship matchup and you're having an issue with any type of injuries or anything like that, we just got to get guys into our lineup that we know are going to score points. That's a big plus for us right now. Speaking of that, Tony Pollard. Now, Tony Pollard, if you were listening to the show last week, I told you if you're an Ezekiel Elliott owner, you got to add Tony Pollard. We need to handcuff our own running backs. Hopefully you did that, because this week, a surprise move, Ezekiel Elliott ruled out. Now, is he going to be ruled out again next week? No idea at this point. But if he is, Tony Pollard going up against Philadelphia, another good bet to put up quite a bit of points based on volume alone. He had 132 total yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Looked really, really good in that matchup and could do the same against Philadelphia this coming week. So hopefully you already own him, but if you don't, you can grab him this week and definitely use him. Frank Gore for the New York Jets, just like Sony Michel, nothing crazy. Okay, he's not going to get you 15 points. If he scores, maybe he's close to it, but probably not. However, Frank Gore at 23% owned going up against Cleveland. He did have 23 carries last week. Could expect some of the same. And, it was a tough matchup, but he still carried the ball 23 times against the Rams. So for Frank Gore this week going up against Cleveland, definitely a situation that you can grab him and use him, and he's going to get you 20 touches again. Jamal Williams for Green Bay. Now, the reason I'm adding him into this is because maybe we see Aaron Jones maybe just get ticked back a little bit more in terms of touches. I mean, him and Jamal Williams are already getting quite a bit of shared workload. They're splitting a lot of the touches. However, with Green Bay really close to wrapping up that 1 seed, going up against Tennessee's going to be a tough matchup. They're going to have to keep up. They're going to have to play this entire game. But maybe it's more of a split workload this week. So for those of you that are, again, fighting for touches in some way, shape, or form, Jamal Williams is a guy that you could grab, and he'll get you a few touches here or there. All right, for wide receivers now, Michael Thomas done for the regular season, not for the playoffs, but for the regular season. So Emmanuel Sanders kind of stepping into that wide receiver 1 territory for New Orleans. 41% owned, gets Minnesota next week. A really good matchup for him. And again, no MT. Breeze is back. Breeze definitely had to shake some rust off at the beginning of that game against Kansas City, but looked a lot better towards the end. And then Sammy Watkins from Kansas City. 30.6% owned. Going up against Atlanta, this is a good matchup for him as well. He has 6 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games. And in a matchup like Atlanta, where there could be a lot of back and forth, a lot of throwing, Sammy Watkins definitely has the possibility to put up some decent numbers. Again, not really high ceiling because we know that goes to Hill and Kelsey, but he could be that number 3 target. And with no CEH and, maybe some targets that CEH would have gotten in the passing game being spread back out, that could help him as well. Russell Gage from Atlanta in the same game going up against Kansas City. This is another great matchup for Russell Gage if Julio ends up being out. As I mentioned last week with Russell Gage, if Julio's out, he's always a consideration to start. Chad Hansen and Kiki Cutie from Houston going up against Cincinnati. Hansen does have at least 50 receiving yards in each of his last 3 games, and he did find the end zone last week as well. And Kiki Cutie, he's got a touchdown in 3 straight games. So if Brandon Cooks is healthy and on the field, I like Kiki Cutie as a really safe second option. That's what he's been the last couple of weeks after that huge week, the first week missing Will Fuller. Greg Ward from Philadelphia, 1% owned. Dallas, awesome matchup for him. Couple of touchdowns in the red zone last week for Greg Ward. And as we'll talk about here in a minute at the quarterback position, he is an excellent option this week. For those of you that are struggling at wide receiver, you can grab him right now, only 1% owned, put him into your wide receiver 3 position. I wouldn't flex him over a running back. If you've got a running back that you could put out there instead, I would rather go with the running back, but I will flex him, or I will put him into the wide receiver 3. And if he scores, he's made up all the value there for you. From Green Bay, going up against Tennessee, a defense that gives up a lot of big plays. I mean, even this past week to an unhealthy Matthew Stafford, gave up some big plays to Marvin Jones. Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, both of them under 50% owned. Lazard at 20%, Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 10%. This is an absolute amazing matchup. And because of how good the offense is over for Tennessee, there could be a lot of throwing. So I think you could go with either of these guys this week. Lazard is going to be a lot safer. MVS is going to have a much higher ceiling. If I had to pick one, I would rather have Lazard this week, but that's okay. If you can get MVS and throw him in again as your wide receiver 3, one big play and he's made all the value there for you in that position. This game is going to be an excellent opportunity for both of these guys to eat volume. Only 3 guys to talk about at tight end this week. Number 1, Dan Arnold, 1% owned. He's really still not that big of a thing. Honestly, I'm not telling you to go pick up Dan Arnold and play him right away, but if you absolutely need help at tight end, going up against San Francisco, no TD last week, but still some yards. Kyler Murray's been looking his way a little bit more over the last few weeks, and like I said, I still think it has something to do with that shoulder injury, maybe not being able to push the ball down the field nearly as much as he has in the past this season. But with Dan Arnold, he's been looking his way a lot more since he kind of came down with that shoulder injury and has been suffering from that a little bit. Irv Smith Jr., 3.2% owned. If Kyle Rudolph is out again, going up against Minnesota, a great option for Irv Smith Jr. Tyler Conklin did have more receiving yards last week, but I still think Irv Smith Jr. is the big target there. Tyler Conklin had a big 30-yard play that really kind of solidified all those yards that he had last week, but Irv Smith Jr. is kind of that number 1 tight end there still for me as well. If Kyle Rudolph is out, it's Irv Smith Jr. for me. And then Logan Thomas, get this guy on your roster if you haven't already done it. A huge game last week. Now he goes up against Carolina this week. This guy could be your saving grace at the tight end position this week. All right, so this whole entire episode has basically been streaming options, but normally in the past waiver wire videos, we've talked about streamers in terms of quarterback and defensive special teams only. So that's this part of the episode where we kind of go into the quarterbacks and defensive teams that you'll be streaming this week. I've got 3 at quarterback for you. Baker Mayfield going up against the Jets. You can stop Goff, Jets, but you aren't going to be able to stop Baker Mayfield and the hot Cleveland Browns right now. Baker Mayfield in the first half of that Giants game looked absolutely unbeatable, completed 13 of 15 passes, a couple of touchdowns. It's super efficient, driving the ball down the field, working off the play action. Exactly what we talked about before the season began and why Baker Mayfield was going to be successful this year. Jalen Hurts is my Manscaped must-add of the week. Going up against the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to tell you right now, Jalen Hurts, I'm going to start him basically over every single quarterback that you have available to you that's not named Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, those top guys. Jalen Hurts is more than likely going to be a top 5 quarterback for me this week. If you can get your hands on him and you don't own one of the top quarterbacks, you pick him up and you can start him this week. And that's why he's my Manscaped must start. A huge ceiling going up against this Dallas Cowboys defense. Expect Jalen Hurts to have a huge game this week. Don't forget, if you head over to manscaped.com and use the code word headliners, all capital letters, you can get 20% off any of their great products plus free shipping. All right, so this holiday season, if you need to treat yourself to a little bit of a trim down below after trimming the tree, you can go ahead and head to manscaped.com. Use code word headliners, all capital letters, and 20% off and free shipping of all their great products. My last QB streaming option this week, Mitchell Trubisky. He actually looks like a decent quarterback right now. It took Nagy long enough to figure out how to unlock the potential that Trubisky had hidden deep inside of him, but he's finally done that. Trubisky, he doesn't look like a world beater right now, okay? He doesn't look like he's a guy that's going to be like a top 10, 15 option every single week, but he's taking care of the football a little bit better. He's moving well. He's getting outside the pocket. He's making pretty good decisions. He's looking a lot better, and he gets Jacksonville this week. As far as defensive teams go, the Browns and the Bears are really the two that I'm looking at this week. Both of them are just under 50% owned, but they have great matchups against the Jets and Jacksonville. There were some other options I was looking at, but I was like, those are a little bit risky. These are the two that I honed in and said, these are the best options for you this week. If they're still available in your league, you can go ahead and stream both of these teams this week and get great outcomes. There you have it, Headliner Nation. Not a whole lot to talk about this week because, again, instead of talking about a bunch of players that can help us all season long, we really focused on guys that could only help us in week 16. But don't forget, we'll be back here for week 17, so don't disappear. And we're here all off season as well, so don't go anywhere after the season is over, ladies and gentlemen. But I appreciate everybody tuning into this episode. Thanks so much for stopping by here in week 16. Good luck to all of you with matchups this week. Do me a favor, if you appreciate the content, hit the like button. If there's a player I didn't talk about, ask in the comments down below. And as always, if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button and become a part of Headliner Nation today. Appreciate you all so much. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.